I'm Rachel Bennett, 31 years old, and last night my sister looked me dead in the eye and said, "No one wants you here." My mother lowered her gaze. My father gave the smallest nod, like it had all been decided before I walked in the room. I didn't shout or cry, just stood up, walked out and shut the front door behind me. No suitcase, just a duffel bag, and the quietest exit a person can make after 3 decades of trying. Now I'm waking up on my friend's couch with the city outside and 39 missed calls blinking on my screen, the same voices that told me I didn't matter. Suddenly, act like I'm the one holding everything together. Before I go any further, let me know where you're listening from in the comments, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever been pushed aside by the people who were supposed to love you first. I grew up in a small town outside Milwaukee. Nothing fancy, just rows of modest houses and neighbors who knew each other's dogs by name. My mom used to say we were a practical family, meaning birthdays meant grocery store cupcakes, and if you wanted something extra, you earned it. I never thought of that as cold, just how things were. There were 3 of us kids. Ashley was the oldest cheer captain yearbook photo favorite, the one who got her own key to Dad's pickup before she could legally drive. Ryan came last rowdy, always forgiven the golden boy with scraped knees and a dozen second chances. And me, I was the middle one, the steady one. Never needed much, never caused a fuss. My report cards came home neat and solid A's and B's, no calls from teachers. I packed my own lunch, kept curfews, watched from the sidelines while Ashley got flowers for her debate finals, and Ryan's birthday parties spilled into the street. Mine were a couple of cupcakes on the kitchen counter, sometimes a card, always the same line. "Sorry, we've just been so busy lately." It wasn't the kind of hurt you could point at. No single big betrayal, just a slow, quiet erosion. I remember once, I must have been 17, I saved up for my job at the bookstore to buy Mom this vintage recipe book. She'd mentioned it once years before. I wrapped it, wrote a note, handed it to her after dinner. She opened it, smiled faintly. "Thanks, Rach." Then Ashley handed her a candle in a glossy bag, and Mom lit up like she'd been handed the moon. "Oh, honey, you always know exactly what I like." That was the moment I started noticing the pattern. Not the moments when I was disliked, but when I was nothing. My voice would trail off at dinner because Ashley had a new internship to brag about. I'd step into a room and everyone would already be laughing at something she said. I'd win something like the time I placed first in an art show, and the response would be, "That's nice, honey," without a glance up from the phone. So I learned to fold inward. I stopped announcing my wins, stopped expecting anything but polite nods. I wasn't angry, not then, just tired. There's a kind of weariness that doesn't show up in your face but lives behind your eyes. Still, I held on to one small hope, that someday somehow they'd realize what they'd overlooked. Not for show, not for drama. I just wanted to be seen, to matter. Last night they made it plain I didn't. And yet this morning my phone won't stop buzzing. Missed calls, texts, voicemails. It's funny how fast things shift when they think you're gone for good. But I'm not racing to call them back. Not yet. And they don't know it yet, but what happened at that family meeting wasn't just another cold shoulder. It was the last one I'd ever accept. Ashley always had a way of drawing the room toward her like gravity. It didn't matter if I was already speaking or halfway through a sentence when she walked in. Heads turned, voices quieted. Even the rhythm of the house seemed to shift just to make space for her. At school events, my parents brought flowers for her debate finals, her dance recitals, her most improved math award. When I got into the National Honor Society, Mom smiled from behind her phone, scrolling through Ashley's prom photos, and said, "That's nice, honey." Then she went right back to editing captions. Dinner plans were scheduled around Ashley's cheer practice. Family vacations happened wherever Ashley wanted to go. Even the furniture in the living room was moved around to give her favorite chair the best view of the TV. If I ever asked for anything like a weekend trip with friends or an extra art class, it always turned into a discussion about Ashley's needs. Maybe next month, Rachel. Ashley has that college tour coming up. Or, your sister's been under a lot of pressure lately. Be understanding. It wasn't just favoritism. It was orbit. The rest of us weren't people in the house we were supporting roles. And Ashley, she didn't need to be cruel to remind us of that. Her silence was enough. Her half-smile when I got scolded. The way she'd forget to mention my name when someone complimented something we worked on together. When I called her out, she'd tilt her head all innocence and say, "You're being too sensitive." That phrase, those 4 words, shaped my teenage years. I started second-guessing myself. Maybe I was too thin-skinned. Maybe I was making drama out of nothing. But deep down, something never quite settled. There's a difference between peace and silence, and I was learning that too late. Ashley never needed to raise her voice to get her way. She'd just let the world bend toward her, and the rest of us learned to get out of the way. By the time I was 22, I had a drawer full of unspoken words, things I didn't say because there was no point, achievements I didn't mention because no one would ask, feelings I never named because they were too easily dismissed. I remember one night in particular. It was 2 weeks after I'd helped Ashley open a bank account. She was turning 18 and didn't want our parents involved. I was flattered she came to me. Thought maybe it meant she saw me differently. She handed me the forms, told me where to sign, and thanked me with a casual, "You're a lifesaver." That was it. No follow-up, no appreciation later. Just a signature, then back to business as usual. Still, I held on to moments like that. Small scraps, things that almost felt like connection. Then came the night of the family meeting. It was a Sunday evening. My dad texted all of us, rare for him, and said we should meet in the living room after dinner. No reason, no details, just family meeting. 7:00. I got there right on time. Ashley was already on the couch legs, tucked under her, wearing one of her matching lounge sets. Mom sat with her usual cup of tea, her expression unreadable. Dad was in his recliner, arms crossed. I sat down, trying to read the room. "What's this about?" Ashley gave me a look like she'd been waiting for that question. "It's about you," she said sweetly, "and how your attitude lately has been exhausting." I didn't say anything at first, just stared at her. Mom chimed in, "You've been so distant, so cold." "I've been quiet," I said. Not negative, just done trying. Dad leaned forward. That tone, that bitterness, it's toxic. I felt my hands clench in my lap. Toxic. That's what they were calling me. Ashley added, "You used to be so helpful, Rachel. So easy to manage." Those words hit harder than I expected. Easy to manage. Like I was a piece of furniture. Something to keep out of the way until needed. I took a slow breath. "Is this because I wouldn't co-sign your apartment lease?" Her jaw tightened. "You could have helped. Instead, you're punishing me." "I'm protecting myself," I said quietly. Ashley rolled her eyes. "You know what? No one wants you here." The room went still. And then nothing. Mom looked down. Dad didn't move. No one said a word in my defense. No one even looked surprised. I stood up, walked past them without another word. I didn't pack with urgency. I folded each shirt, zipped the bag, gently unplugged my charger. No slammed doors, no accusations, just quiet. 30 minutes later, I walked out the front door. No one stopped me. The air outside was cold, sharper than usual. I didn't know where I was going, just that I couldn't stay there another minute. I walked for maybe half an hour before pulling out my phone. There was only one person I could think of, Jordan. He wasn't a best friend, not in the traditional sense, but he was someone who noticed, who remembered little things, who once said, "You always get talked over at dinner like it was just a fact." When I knocked on his door just after 9, he didn't ask any questions. He just opened it, stepped aside and said, "Come in." He handed me a blanket and a slice of cold pizza. I fell asleep on his couch with the hum of city traffic outside the window and the quietest kind of safety wrapped around my shoulders. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight through the blinds and the smell of burnt toast. And then I saw my phone. 39 missed calls. From the same people who said I didn't matter. And that's where everything started to change. The first thing I noticed was how quiet the apartment felt. Not silent in a cold way, but in a way that let me breathe without bracing for anything. I sat on the edge of the couch, wrapped in a borrowed blanket, holding a chipped coffee mug in both hands. The morning light was soft, slanting through the blinds across Jordan's tiny kitchen table. My phone buzzed once, then again, another missed call. I looked down 42 now, most of them from numbers I recognized too well. My parents. Ashley. Even Ryan, though I hadn't heard from him in months. A few unknown numbers, too. Probably my parents trying from work phones. The messages were all the same shape. "Please call us. This is serious. We need you to come home." The same people who barely acknowledged me at the dinner table now couldn't seem to go a single hour without trying to reach me. I didn't text back. Not yet. Jordan walked in from his bedroom, rubbing the sleep out of his eyes. He looked at me, then at the screen still lit up with notifications. "You want to talk about it?" I shook my head. "Maybe later." He nodded and didn't press. Just set a bowl of cereal in front of me and walked back to the kitchen. That quietness again. No one interrupting. No one dismissing what I might say. By noon, the missed calls had climbed into the 50s. Texts were coming faster now. I read them slowly, one by one. My mother's messages were sprinkled with urgency and guilt. "Rachel, this isn't what it looked like. Just call me, please. Your sister is going through something. We need you." Dad's were sharper. "You're being childish. Stop ignoring us. Come home. We don't have time for this." Ashley's text came mid-afternoon. It was short. "Come home. Something's wrong." I waited another hour. Then I finally wrote back. "What happened?" The reply came almost immediately. From my mom. "Ashley's identity was stolen. Her bank accounts are locked. They need an emergency contact to verify the information, and your name is still listed. You're the only one who can do it." I stared at that message for a long time. It took a minute to remember. When Ashley had just turned 18, she asked me to help her open that account. She didn't want our parents involved. I signed the papers not thinking much of it, just figured I was helping her out. I hadn't thought about it in years. Now suddenly I was the only one who could fix this. They didn't want me. They needed me. There's a difference. Another series of messages followed. "My dad again. We don't have time for attitude. Just come down and handle it." Then Mom. "Please, Rachel, this is serious." Then Ashley. "You're really going to let me go through this alone?" I set the phone down and let it buzz against the table. Jordan came back from a walk and saw me sitting in the same spot. He raised an eyebrow. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said quietly. "I think I am. I didn't rush. I didn't pack. I didn't panic." I let another hour pass, and then finally I sent the message. "Meet me outside. I'll be there in 20 minutes." Jordan handed me his car keys without a word. I drove back to the house I grew up in. Same driveway, same porch light. But everything felt different. My hands were steady on the wheel. My shoulders were relaxed. When I pulled up, they were already waiting. Ashley was pacing her phone clutched in her hand, mascara smudged just slightly under one eye. Mom stood with her arms crossed, trying to hold a composed expression, though her eyes were red. Dad had that same stiff posture, arms folded, jaw clenched, like he still thought he was in control of something. I got out slowly. No greeting, no smile. I looked at each of them. So who's going to tell me what happened? Ashley jumped in first. My accounts are frozen. I can't access anything without a verification signature. The bank said you're still listed as the emergency contact. I didn't realize that hadn't changed. You never bothered, I said. You only think of me when you need something. She opened her mouth but didn't say anything. Mom stepped in. Rachel, we know this is complicated, but we really need your help. I looked at her. Last night you nodded when she said I wasn't wanted here. Her lips parted, but she couldn't seem to find the right words. Dad's voice cut in. This is a family emergency. We don't have time for an emotional detour. I raised an eyebrow. Ah, so now I'm family. That made him shift a little. Ashley folded her arms. Look, I'm sorry you're mad. I'm not mad, I said. I'm awake. I let the words settle, looked at each of them. For years, I let you treat me like I didn't matter. I stayed quiet. I made things easy. I tried. And when I stopped bending, you called me toxic. Mom's voice shook slightly. No one's perfect. No, I said, but some people are cruel, and others just stand there and let it happen. Silence. Then I asked, You want me to go to the bank, fix this for her? After all of that, Ashley looked down. I nodded. Fine. But I want something first. Dad stiffened. Money. Is that what this is about? I almost laughed. No. I want a public apology. Ashley looked up. Excuse me, in the family group chat I said, each of you, I want you to admit how you treated me, and I want you to thank me for helping. Dad's voice rose. That's ridiculous. I turned and walked back to the car. Mom grabbed my arm. Please, can't we do this privately? No, I said. You humiliated me in front of each other. You can apologize the same way. I got in the car, closed the door, started the engine. The buzz came through just as I reached the corner. A new message in the group chat. From Dad. We need to talk about how we've treated Rachel. It was short, formal, but it was something. Mom followed. Then finally Ashley. I'm sorry for what I said. I didn't mean it. I was cruel. Thank you for helping anyway. I read them all, sent a thumbs-up emoji, then put my phone face down on the passenger seat. No reply, no promise, just acknowledgement. And that was the first time in a long time I didn't feel invisible. I stayed in the car for a while after sending that thumbs up. No music, no calls, just the soft tick of the engine cooling and the occasional wind tapping against the glass. I didn't know what I was waiting for exactly, but I wasn't in a rush to go anywhere. For once, I wasn't trying to fix things or smooth something over. I just sat still. Back at Jordan's place, the sun was already slipping behind the buildings. I let myself in quietly. He was sitting at the kitchen table, a sketch pad in front of him, pencil tucked behind his ear. He looked up, studying my face for a second before speaking. You good? I nodded. Yeah, I think I am. He didn't ask what happened. He just pushed a carton of Thai food toward me and said I ordered too much. We ate in comfortable silence, the kind you don't have to fill. I didn't check my phone again that night. I muted the family group chat, turned the screen over, and focused on the way the lamplight hit the edges of Jordan's drawings. I slept better than I had in years. The next morning there were more messages waiting. Not just follow-ups, but new ones, longer ones. My dad's came first stiff, full of careful phrasing like someone trying to sound sincere without stepping too far outside their comfort zone. We need to acknowledge how we've made Rachel feel. Mistakes were made. We hope she can find it in her heart to support us now. Mom's was softer, but still filled with qualifiers. I know we haven't always shown our appreciation. You've always been an important part of this family. Please help us. Ashley's message was the shortest. I was wrong. I was mean. I'm sorry I said something I can't take back. I hope you'll still help me. I read them all over a bowl of cereal. Then I typed out a reply. I'll think about it. And I meant it, not as a threat, not as a game, just a quiet truth. By Wednesday, I still hadn't gone to the bank. They hadn't stopped trying. More voicemails, more texts. Most of them danced around the same theme: urgency, regret, and a request. Always a request. As if the apology only counted if it came with a favor. I spent the afternoon cleaning up Jordan's apartment a little, folding the blanket I'd slept under, straightening up the kitchen. He didn't ask me to, but I needed to keep my hands busy. I needed to feel grounded in something simple. That evening, I pulled out my old sketchbook. It had been tucked into the bottom of my duffel bag, half buried under clothes I'd packed in a rush. I hadn't opened it in months, maybe longer. The pages were a little bent at the corners, but the pencil marks still looked fresh. I sat cross-legged on the couch and started drawing again. Nothing fancy, just shapes, lines, bits of light and shadow. And as I filled the paper, something inside me started to lift. I didn't go to the bank the next day either. On Friday morning, I got another string of messages. Dad, we're losing time. Please just go to the bank. Mom, there are fees piling up. Ashley's credit might be at risk. Ashley, you're really going to let me drown for one sentence. That one stayed on the screen longer than the others. One sentence. As if everything that led up to it didn't count. As if years of being overlooked, dismissed, and pushed aside could be boiled down to a single moment, an isolated slip of the tongue. I typed my reply slowly, one line at a time. You didn't drown because of one sentence. You drowned because you built your raft out of everyone else's silence. I just stepped off. I put the phone down and didn't check it again that night. Saturday morning came with a kind of quiet I hadn't known I needed. No calls, no texts, just sunlight through the window and the sound of traffic humming in the distance. Jordan had already left for work, but he'd left a note on the fridge with a doodle of a smiling sun and the words, "Help yourself to the cereal." You survived Hell Week. I smiled without thinking. A real one. I poured myself a cup of coffee, still wrapped in that same blanket. I stepped out onto the tiny balcony, the mug warm in my hands, and just stood there for a few minutes, watching the city move, breathing in the morning air. My phone buzzed once. A single notification from the bank. Emergency contact authorization expired. New user added to account. They'd found someone else. Of course they had. I deleted the message and stood there a little longer. I had never been indispensable, just available, just willing. But that wasn't the role I was playing anymore. I finished my coffee, stepped back inside, and opened my laptop. There was an artist residency I'd bookmarked years ago, a program in Seattle. I'd talked myself out of applying, more than once told myself it was too far, too expensive, too uncertain. Mostly I hadn't applied because someone else always needed the car, or I was asked to stay close, or I was told it wasn't practical. But now, no one was asking, no one was telling, no one was interrupting. I filled out the application, attached a few pieces I was proud of, wrote the essay in one sitting, and clicked submit. That evening I curled up on the couch again, pencil smudges on my fingers, and a quiet in my chest I didn't recognize at first. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't guilt. It was space. On Sunday afternoon, I walked into the credit union just before closing wearing jeans and an old sweatshirt Jordan had lent me. No makeup, no script, no performance. The teller asked if I needed to make a transaction. I handed her my ID and quietly said I needed to speak with someone in account services. She led me to a woman behind a small desk with a nameplate that read, Dina Wallace, Member Services. I sat down and slid over the old paperwork Ashley and I had signed years ago. The woman scanned through the forms and then looked up at me. You're still listed as the primary emergency contact, she said. Would you like to remove yourself from the account? I nodded. Yes, effective immediately. She clicked through a few screens, then turned the monitor toward me. You'll just need to verify your identity here and initial at the bottom. I signed, handed the pen back, and exhaled. Outside, the air felt different, lighter somehow. I didn't call anyone. I didn't text to say it was done. I just got back in the car, turned the key, and drove. That night, Jordan was working late. I reheated some leftover soup and settled on the couch with my sketchpad in my lap. I didn't draw at first. I just traced the edges of the paper with my fingers slow and steady until I finally made the first mark. A long, sloping line that didn't look like anything in particular, but it was mine. Around 9 o'clock, my phone buzzed with a new message in the family group chat. Ashley. Did you go to the bank? I didn't respond right away. I read it twice, then set the phone face down again. About 30 minutes later, she followed up. They said the account's accessible now, so thanks, I guess. That was it. No call, no voice, just 2 flat lines of text. I didn't reply. On Monday morning, I got a message from my mom. We're glad everything is resolved. Maybe when things settle, we can talk. I muted the chat again, not out of spite, just out of peace. I spent most of that day organizing my portfolio, not the one I kept on a flash drive for job interviews, but the one that felt personal. I pulled pieces from old notebooks, scanned a few paintings I hadn't looked at in years, and created a folder labeled Seattle Residency. Final. I saved it twice. Once on my laptop, and once on a small drive I tucked into my coat pocket. That evening, Jordan got home with 2 paper bags of groceries and a lopsided grin. I bought vegetables, he said. No idea what to do with them, but I figured you would. We made soup again, something simple, nothing fancy. And afterward, we sat on the floor with bowls balanced on our knees and talked about nothing for a while. Books we never finished, teachers we still remembered, cities we wanted to visit but hadn't yet. At one point, he looked at me and said, "You seem different." I didn't ask what he meant. I just nodded. Tuesday passed quietly. A few work emails, a grocery run, and another round of sketching. I didn't check my phone until after dinner when I noticed a voicemail from my dad. I listened with the speaker pressed against my ear, the sound turned low. He didn't yell. He didn't apologize either, just said, "We understand if you don't want to be involved, but we appreciate what you did. We'll figure the rest out." Then there was a pause, a longer one. Finally, "Take care of yourself." I sat with that message for a while, letting the weight of it settle somewhere I couldn't quite name. Later that night, I checked my email. There was a response from the residency coordinator in Seattle. They had received my application. Final selections would be announced in 3 weeks. I closed the laptop and rested my head against the back of the couch. Outside, the traffic had thinned to a few passing cars and the soft hum of streetlights buzzing to life. It wasn't silence in the old way, the kind that made me feel small. This was something else. Stillness. Room to breathe. The next morning, I walked to a cafe near the apartment. I hadn't been there before, but the chalkboard outside said quiet place, strong coffee, and that was enough for me. I found a table by the window and pulled out my sketchbook again. A couple sat nearby, talking in low voices. Their laughter drifted over once in a while, easy and light. A woman in her 70s read a newspaper at the counter, sipping slowly from a ceramic mug. The barista brought my coffee without asking for a name. I nodded a thank you and returned to the page in front of me. It wasn't until I turned to a fresh sheet that I realized how steady my hands were. No tension in my shoulders, no second guessing, just line and color and space. That afternoon, back at the apartment, I got one final message from Ashley. "You did what you needed to do. I guess I get it. We won't bother you again. No punctuation, no warmth. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my laptop and made a list of all the cities I'd ever wanted to visit. Not just places, but reasons. A museum in Chicago, a trail in northern Arizona, a bookstore in Portland someone once told me about. I didn't know where I was going next, but for the first time I knew I'd get to choose. A few days passed before I heard anything more from my family. I woke up to a quieter phone. No missed calls, no frantic texts. I took it as a sign that whatever needed fixing was fixed, or at least patched up enough that they could go back to life as it was. I spent those mornings at Jordan's little kitchen table, sunlight cutting across the linoleum, my coffee cooling as I paged through art supply catalogs and browsed travel blogs. Sometimes I'd walk down to the city park with a sketch pad and just watch the way the light changed over the lawns. There was a gentle freedom in the new rhythm, as if my days had suddenly opened wider. One afternoon I got a notice from the Seattle residency program. My application had moved to the final round, and they wanted an updated portfolio. I set aside the rest of the afternoon to work sifting through paintings and drawings, laying them out across the table. For the first time in years, I didn't feel rushed or anxious about someone else's plans colliding with mine. I let myself linger over each piece, remembering when I painted it the colors I mixed the quiet I was in when I worked. When I finished, I scanned everything and sent it off with a note that simply said, "Thank you for considering me." Then I closed my laptop and sat in the hush that followed. Around dusk, the group chat lit up again. This time it was my dad. "Can you talk?" His message was short, a little less formal than before, but still careful. I hesitated, then called him back, letting the phone ring until his voice picked up on the third try. He started with a sigh, not a greeting. "Your mom and I have been talking," he said. "We know things can't go back to how they were. I think we owe you more than just a thank you." There was a long pause. I could hear the creak of his old desk chair in the background. "We never meant to make you feel invisible. Maybe we got too comfortable letting Ashley take the spotlight. Maybe we didn't notice how much you stepped aside." Another pause. I waited. "I don't expect you to forgive us overnight, but I want you to know we're trying to see things differently now. If you want to keep your distance, we'll respect that. If you want to come over, you're welcome. But only if you want to." I listened, saying nothing for a while. Then I thanked him for calling. I told him I needed time, and he said he understood. Before we hung up, his voice softened. "You always deserved more than what we gave." Afterward, I sat at the table, letting his words drift through the apartment. It wasn't everything. It wasn't even enough to patch all the old hurts. But it was the first real shift I'd ever heard from him, a break in the old patterns, however small. Later, I got a text from my mom. "I made your favorite lemon bars. They're in the fridge if you ever want to stop by." That night, I talked with Jordan about it. He listened, asking only what I wanted, not what I planned to do. I told him I wasn't sure. I wasn't angry. I just needed time to feel steady in this new space. The following day, a final message appeared in the family chat, this time from Ashley. "I found a way to sort out my credit. Don't worry about me anymore. Hope you're good. No blame." No expectation, just a simple, flat statement. I read it twice and felt a weight leave my shoulders. After lunch, I got another email from Seattle. I had been accepted for a summer session. The residency started in late June. There was a stipend, a small studio, and nothing required of me but to show up and work. I sat at the kitchen table, hands in my lap, staring at the confirmation message. It felt almost unreal that something I wanted for so long was actually waiting for me. That evening, as the city lights came on and the air turned cool, I walked to the corner market and bought myself a slice of cake. I ate it on the balcony, wrapped in a blanket, listening to traffic and laughter from the street below. I let myself sit with the stillness, knowing that the ground had shifted beneath my feet, and I hadn't lost my balance. The next morning I started to pack. Not because anyone asked me to, not because there was a crisis, but because I was ready for whatever came next. I woke up to the soft sound of rain on the window, the city outside muffled and slow. There was a sense of stillness that morning, no urgent messages, no family drama waiting on my phone, just the steady comfort of a quiet day ahead. I brewed coffee in Jordan's kitchen and watched the gray sky lighten by degrees, the world unfolding at its own pace. As I finished packing, I found little reminders of the last week's sketches I'd done on the couch, a mug Jordan insisted I take for the road, a sticky note on the fridge. "Good luck, Seattle. You've got this." I left the apartment key on the table and slipped outside the sidewalk shining with rain. My bag felt lighter than I expected. Before heading out of town, I stopped by my parents' house. I parked a few houses down and took my time walking up the familiar drive, the grass still damp from the morning storm. My mother answered the door. She looked smaller somehow, not the sharp-edged woman I remembered from childhood, but someone trying to piece things together. "Rachel," she said, voice soft. "Do you have a minute?" Inside the house was quieter than I remembered. No TV blaring, no clatter from the kitchen, just a soft, uncertain energy in the air. Dad was sitting at the table, his hands wrapped around a mug, eyes tired but open. Ashley wasn't there, but a card addressed to her sat on the counter. My mother gestured for me to sit. She offered lemon bars just like she used to, setting them in front of me with careful hands. "We've been talking a lot," she began, her voice measured, "about how things used to be, about how we miss things we shouldn't have." Dad nodded, glancing up. "You always did more than we noticed, Rachel. We see that now." The words weren't polished. There were pauses, and sometimes they seemed to search for what to say next, but they were honest in a way I hadn't heard before. There was no request, no expectation, just an awkward, genuine attempt to acknowledge the years gone by. My mother slid an envelope across the table, an old birthday card with a note tucked inside. "I saved this," she said, "but I never sent it. I'm sorry for that." I didn't try to fill the silence. I let it settle. It was the kind that felt like a clearing, not a wall. We talked for a little while. Nothing dramatic, just small memories shared in low voices, stories about summers gone, photos I'd drawn as a kid. Before I left, my dad reached for my hand, holding it gently. "You don't owe us anything, but we'd like to stay in touch if you want to." Back outside, the rain had stopped and the sky was pale blue. I tucked the card into my bag, feeling something loosen in my chest. On the way to the car, Ashley texted me. Just 3 words. "I hope you're well." It was the first time she'd written without asking for anything. As I drove out of town, I looked in the rearview mirror, not searching for approval or a sign I'd made the right choice, but simply marking the place where the story had changed. The highway was long-lined with tall evergreens, and the miles stretched out quietly ahead. I stopped once at a roadside diner drinking black coffee and watching a family laugh at a corner booth. The world was wide, the air fresh, and for the first time, I felt fully in my own life. Later that evening, I checked into a small motel just outside Seattle, the kind with faded flowered bedspreads and a view of the parking lot. I sent Jordan a picture of the mug he'd given me perched on the nightstand and thanked him for everything. He wrote back, "You did this on your own, Rachel. Don't forget that." I slept with the window, cracked the air cool and quiet, my sketchbook open on the pillow beside me. There was no rush to begin again. I knew the next day would come with new questions and new beginnings, but for now, there was peace. The next morning, I woke up to a soft blue sky above the Seattle rooftops. I made coffee in the little motel room, letting the steam curl around me as I watched the world outside start its day. The city felt new and open, and for the first time in years, my life didn't feel built around anyone else's needs or plans. I sat by the window with my sketchbook sunlight warming my feet and listened to the gentle buzz of the street below, a world moving on with or without me. There was peace in the quiet and a steady sense of belonging in the simple act of being where I chose to be. Later, I walked along the water, taking in the sound of gulls and the scent of salt air, my bag slung over my shoulder. I thought about my family not with bitterness, but with a sort of distance I'd never managed before. I knew things would never be what they should have been. My parents might never truly understand the ways their silences shaped me, and Ashley would probably keep chasing the spotlight no matter who was watching. But I realized I didn't need to carry any of that anymore. The need to prove myself, the urge to shrink or soften to fit into a space that was never really mine, those burdens had slipped away the moment I stepped off their front porch for the last time. The phone stayed mostly quiet, except for the occasional message from Jordan checking in. My parents sent a holiday card, just a few lines and a photo. There were no grand apologies, no dramatic reunions, and I found I was okay with that. What mattered was the life I was making for myself, the mornings I spent painting in a sunlit studio, the new friendships that began to form in small, real ways. I discovered how light it felt to walk through the world without bracing for judgment or shrinking for someone else's comfort. Sometimes on cool evenings, I'd think about that younger version of myself, the one who always waited for a kind word, who carried disappointment like a secret. I wish she'd known sooner that love isn't something you should have to earn, and belonging doesn't come from disappearing into someone else's shadow. If there's a lesson I'd share, it's that dignity and peace aren't gifts other people give us. They're choices we make when we finally see our own worth. So here I am, living in a city I once only dreamed of working in the quiet hours and choosing how my days unfold. My family's story isn't erased, but it's no longer the center of mine. I've learned that sometimes justice doesn't look like apologies or big reckonings. Sometimes it's simply the freedom to build the kind of life you always hoped for, one that feels honest and gentle and entirely your own. Thank you for listening to my story. If any part of it resonated with you, I hope you'll share your own in the comments or with someone you trust. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, I'd be glad to have you join me here again. Take care of yourself.